Get over here.
I don't even care that he speaks Japanese the entire film, save this one line. It's worth it to hear that stellar catchphrase. Hello everyone, my name is Ryan, and I have opinions on the Mortal Kombat reboot. Alright, I wasn't planning on making this video, but after watching the Mortal Kombat film, of course I had opinions on it. So I guess that's what we're talking about this week. Content warning, I will be using a few clips of the Mortal Kombat game's fatalities as opposed to the movie for copyright reasons, so just a heads up for digital blood and guts occasionally. Don't say I didn't warn you. Just to open, I gotta say right out of the gate, this Mortal Kombat movie was way better than I was expecting. True, I was a little scared that it could be a complete mess based off of the history of the Mortal Kombat film series, but I was still fairly hopeful for a good turnout, what with more and more franchises getting faithful adaptations these days. And this film certainly didn't disappoint, although it definitely could have been just a tiny bit better. To start off, we should probably address the legacy of Mortal Kombat's film franchise, what with the 1995 version and its sequel, Annihilation. The first film is just such a campy staple of what you should think of when someone says 90s movies. Not that there's anything wrong with that, just that while I and many others personally love it, it won't go down exactly as a cinematic masterpiece. But that's fine, because the 1995 film really gives itself the feeling of knowing what it is, never taking itself too seriously, and at times reveling in the camp. So much so that some of the wilder characteristics they attributed to MK's roster became canon in later games, such as Kano's Aussie gruffness and Shang Tsung's melodramatic love of souls. Its predecessor, Annihilation, however, was panned by critics and audiences alike, being so bad it caused a third movie to linger in development hell for years, until eventually being scrapped in favor of the 2021 reboot. The plot was messy, the special effects, which they leaned heavily on, were arguably worse than the first film, even with that awful reptile character, and they seemed to lean a little too heavily into the B-movie shtick. With that track record, it's no wonder people were a bit nervous about the new film, but luckily it seems to take more after the former entry rather than the latter. Just as a fair warning, I will be giving general spoilers for the new Mortal Kombat from here on out. The new Mortal Kombat movie has a similar challenge that the other two faced right off the bat, a large cast of characters that are almost as weird and alien as the world and premise they're stuck in. While the first movie does a pretty good job of juggling characters, mostly by rewriting a few backgrounds so as not to have to dig into deeper lore, such as Sub-Zero and Scorpion being reduced to just lackeys of the main villain, the second drops the ball by having just too many characters, many of whom show up for a scene or two and are immediately irrelevant, never to be seen in the film again. The reboot, I would say, does an even better job of introducing just as large of a cast while staying true to practically all of the origins. The only odd choice I could say bogs down the roster is that of the movie original character, and ironically, the protagonist of the film, Cole Young. Don't get me wrong, I loved Louis Tan in this role. And look at that, he was Shatterstar in Deadpool? Oh, and Gaius Chow, too, from Into the Badlands? I thought I recognized him. Okay.
We will watch your career with great interest.
However, Cole Young's role does bog the narrative down a bit, as there's a fairly large roster that needs to be introduced, and you can't spend too much time focusing on any one character. This is fine for the rest of the cast who are either familiar to audiences from the game or previous films, or are a little less nuanced in their role. This kind of more nuance-focused character leading the film can work, as it did in 1995's version with Liu Kang and the relationship with his brother. However, Cole is a completely new character with no connections to any of the original IP's characters, except for the few the movie invents for itself. It just feels out of place to have him there, particularly because he is such a grounded character in this fantastical world. I mean, what's with this heartbreaking backstory about him being a failed fighter, where his wife won't watch him fight, but his daughter is his ring coach? That seems like an awesome idea for its own realistic standalone fighter film, like Rocky or the like, but there's almost no time to touch on it, as there are 10 other characters to focus on, and it feels out of place in a world of superpowered death fights. Hopefully the sequels are able to flesh out his backstory and character more, but I can't help but feel like Cole and his family were a little out of place throughout the film. Now, you're probably thinking to yourself, Ryan, who cares? It's a Mortal Kombat movie. We came here for wicked fights and gruesome fatalities. Isn't that enough? And to be fair, you are absolutely right. In many ways, this is the Mortal Kombat movie that we've been waiting for. The first two films from the 90s were rated PG-13 and as such were very tame in their content. Sure, there was death abound, but mostly through neck snapping or just generally being punched to death. The reboot, however, took full advantage of its R rating. We were treated to many faithful recreations to some of the original characters' fatalities, like Kano's heart rip and Jax's head smash, and even some of the more recent examples, like Kung Lao's lumber mill saw hat, which is the only way I could think of describing it. These moments even provided some tongue-in-cheek references from the characters themselves, with Kano declaring, "Kano wins!" like the game announcer, and Kung Lao remarking on his flawless victory. These moments are a little odd to hear coming out of characters' mouths in universe, except when delivered in the original in all of its campy glory by Cary Hiroyuki Tagawa as Shang Tsung.
Flawless victory.
But nevertheless, feel like filmmakers were trying to be as faithful as possible. They even threw in Liu Kang's bicycle kick move in the final act, which I was surprised by, as I was pretty much afraid that we wouldn't see any of the classic movesets throughout any of the fights, and it would just be standard kind of Hollywood kung fu action. But I was extremely excited when I saw that happening on my TV. But this is where the two tones clash. As I've said, Cole is a very grounded character, and he's the focal point of the film. The narrative sways towards more dark and serious tones. Couple that with the bicycle kicks and an audacious Aussie annihilating adversaries, while also quipping about magical boomerang hats, the film seems to have difficulty walking the lines between gritty and campy. Not that the line can't be walked and successfully balanced on, a film doesn't have to pick one or the other, but it feels like Mortal Kombat couldn't fully commit to either or both. I am hoping this is just a case of people not being too sure of how the direction would be received, and with the film's success it allows them to be more confident in their tone and direction going forward. I do look forward to the sequel and to seeing how they toe the line between grounded and camp. I know it can be difficult to blend the two tones, but I am confident in where the series is heading. And thanks for joining this week, guys. And next week I will talk about the difference between a good movie and a movie that's enjoyable. And to see what I mean by that, you'll have to tune in to the next video. Thanks again, and please do like and subscribe if you enjoyed.